Good morning, everyone. So glad you could join us for coffee again. It must be Monday. Gee, I hope you had a nice week and a nice weekend. I always say that every week, but it's what I pray for. And I had a great week. I'm back in Lamont, but I had a great mission in that's for two mission churches in Friedeck, Texas, and Wallace, Texas. And I just alternate churches. Well, this year was at St. Mary's in Friedeck. And the people from Wallace, they come over. It's about 13 miles away. But I just love doing it. It's just two mission churches, and there's just a lot of strong faith. Faith and family, important to them. So I had a good week. And so I'm glad to be back in the nice cold weather. Man, it's cold here, and I got a sweater on. But I want you to continue praying for people who suffer more than a little bit of cold. I'd like you to remember our retired Vincentians. And I can also remember some friends of the mission who are in need of God's healing. And so I'd like you to pray for Clarence and Sharon and Maria and Scott, Nina and Betsy and Karen and Stan, Louise and Bob, Loretta and Bill. Please continue to pray for them. My reflections are a little scattered, like what's new. But there's so many things, this past weekend and this coming week that I wanted to share a few thoughts about. I mean, Saturday, it's always the reminder day for me to make sure that I've finished all my Christmas stuff and whatever I have to do. It was the feast of St. Nicholas. That's Santa Claus. And so I was reminded, you better got a few more things you got to do. And I've got some time to do it, so I'm kind of glad. And then, yesterday was it's a feast of Advent, but I was so taken by the gospel and all the people who grew up like I did with missions or retreats or even the church itself. People will talk about, Father, when are we going to get some more of that fire and brimstone talking, hard, tough. You better get your life together if you want to go to heaven. It was always called the preachers of the fire and brimstone. Well, guess what? That's what John was. Man, he was some tough cookie when his job or his vocation was to call people to get ready for the coming of Jesus. And he was tough about it. Man, he hollered and he attacked people on their thinking if they weren't on board. And I just kind of laughed about it. I thought, that used to be a way we were preaching in the church. Thank God we moved a little away from that. And so then I reflected upon what John was really talking. He came out with about 3 things, maybe more, but I can recall a couple of them that he was strong about. He was very strong. You got to admit your sinfulness and tell God you're sorry. And then I know he really talked a lot about humility. And the whole idea for him was to really appreciate how good God is and all that he does. And they talk about just preparing our hearts for the coming of the Savior, and that we needed to be people who cared for each other, which was a sign that we understood what Jesus was coming to do. And so I appreciated John's tough preaching, and he did it in the gospel too. And he ended up so often in his preaching that they'll know you about what you do. It isn't what you say, it's what you do. And he talked about, good tree will produce good fruit. And so I appreciate that. And then today, being the holy day and the feast day of Mary in the Immaculate Conception feast. And I think, Mary she didn't get a lot of ink in the Gospels, but this week is hers. She's the star this week. And she's got people paying attention. There are enough people saying the rosary all over the world, or all the shrines of Our Lady because of her appearances. So she's definitely the star this week. I was reading a story about this. Yeah, because I was in a little town in Texas. And, I was reading about this guy in that little town, and there must be 4,000 people total in the town. And he's running for mayor, And, there aren't a lot of people that even want the job, and they don't pay much. But anyway, he starts his campaign, never did it before, and so he wanted to have a rally, call people together and tell them to vote for him. So he has a rally, and the next morning he's with his buddies in the coffee shop. They're having breakfast coffee. And he said, "Man, I had that audience in the palm of my hand." His buddy who was there says, "Yeah, all of it." It's about, not many people were there. But Mary this week, honest to God, she's a star. She has the audience in the palm of her hands. We celebrate today not only the sinless Mary, because she was going to bear the child Jesus. So it was natural for her to be pure of sin. And so we celebrate that today. And then this week, Wednesday, we're celebrating the place where she lived, her birthplace, a little house in Loreto, Italy now. They moved it from Nazareth to Loreto. And so we remember her on Wednesday. And then again, at the end of the week, we celebrate the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, remembering Juan Diego having an appearance of Our Lady. And it's kind of a great story. It's a legend. We can't prove everything, but Juan Diego, he came, the lady appeared to him and said, "I'd like to have a shrine, basilica built right here on this spot." And he went and tells the bishop. Bishop didn't believe him. So then he came back the next time. He opened up he had a kind of a cape on, He opened the cape. It was all full of roses. And the bishop decided to build. And then the rest is history. So anyway, Mary is the star, and she should be. She's the mother of the person we're waiting to celebrate his birthday. So anyway, those are my reflections. I sure hope you're able to get ready for Christmas, to heed John's warnings. And so I ask you to join me as we say our prayer together. Divine Savior, transform me into yourself. May my hands be your hands. May my tongue be your tongue. Grant that every faculty of my body may serve only to glorify you. Above all, transform my soul and all its powers, that my memory, my will, and my affections may be the memory, the will, and the affections of you. I pray to destroy in me all that is not of you. Grant that I may live but in you and by you and for you, that I may truly say with St. Paul, I live now, not I, but Christ lives in me. God bless. Check us out on Wednesday and stay safe.